You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography. Episode 22. We talk about wildlife photography without breaking the bank. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with me, Rob Reed, and my co-host Josh Galicki. Hey Josh, how's it going?
Hey, good, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Well, I'm good apart from the rain, which doesn't seem to stop. I know I moaned about this last time, but we had about, well, we were saying just before we started recording, actually, we had about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days where it was dry and everything was drying out and it was looking really good and the spring flowers are starting to show. And of course, the last couple of days down it's come again, and we've got, I don't know, weather warning for 40, 50 mile an hour winds and more rain over the next day or so. So it's not looking good. Yeah. So consequently, I haven't been out with a camera, well, at all. I was going to say not very much. I haven't been out with a camera at all, I think, since we last spoke. But anyway, how about you? Hopefully you've been out.
Yeah, not much, actually. Same here. It's been wet, windy, this El Nino pattern this winter. We've had some coastal flooding here. And crazy enough, yesterday, one of these tankers coming out of Baltimore, which is not far from my house,
all over the news here,
destroyed the Key Bridge, and that was a big thing. Actually, I'm able to watch from my house all of the barges go up, with the cars and everything else, and it's been obviously empty today. There's not much going on, but crazy thing. But the weather, and they found 2 of the 8 individuals that came off of the bridge. I think the other 6 are past now, but diving, the tides, there were coastal flooding. I mean, it's just been real, winter seems to be hanging on here for a little while longer. So I'm just looking forward to spring and some drier weather, because it's been bad. It's been really bad.
It's been really rough. I've never known a winter like it. Not for the rain that we've had.
And probably a sign of things to come too. I think it's going to be like this, unfortunately. No more winters for us here. It's just the wet season, I call it.
No, and well, do you know, it's the seasons seem to be morphing into each other, and strange things are happening. Like bluebells are out already, or some of them are, and that doesn't happen normally until mid-April. So we're a few weeks early. The snowdrops weren't very good this year. But they were quite early as well, and they were, done relatively quickly. So no, it's all a bit of a mess, and you have to think, what are the birds doing? I'm sure that it screws them up as well. I mean, there were people reporting swallows arriving way earlier than they ever have done before this year.
Actually, we had swallows a couple of weeks ago. I had my first osprey actually in the yard today, which it was a little later than I thought. Normally St. Patty's Day is when they show up, but it's good to see them at least.
Yeah, no, it's frightening actually to know what's going on and how the patterns are changing. And as you say, I think we're just going to have to get used to something different. I mean, gone are those cold winters that I remember as a child. Where don't do this at home, folks. Walk across frozen lakes. But you do these things as a kid.
Or ice skate on a frozen lake.
Exactly. And that used to happen every winter here. I mean, okay, it would only be maybe a week or 2, but it would happen every year. And I haven't known that for probably 10 years at least, to that extent now. So it's definitely changing. So anybody who says that climate change isn't happening, you need to open your eyes, people, because it's definitely here.
And there's no escaping it, right? I mean, I look at these maps, at least in the United States. I'm sure it's the same in Europe. Wherever you live, it's either excessive rainfall, it could be coastal flooding, sea level rise, excessive dryness, excessive heat. I mean, there's no good spot right now to really escape this. I mean, we're all going to be touched by it in one way or another.
Yeah, we certainly are. But, anyway, that's a positive note, isn't it? Anyway, on a more positive note, what a great couple of podcasts we've done. The last couple of episodes have been really good with the guests. So with Georgina talking about her book, and obviously with Jake Willers as well, and that discussion on videography, which I thought was fascinating. Yeah, it was brilliant. But I thought we'd sort of get back to basics and just have a chat between the two of us. And this idea was really sparked. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, actually, and it's been on the list to talk about. But I went to the photography show in the UK, in Birmingham, at the NEC, a week or so ago, and obviously, when you go somewhere like that, I go to catch up with a few people I haven't seen for a while, and I go to enjoy a couple of the talks and that sort of thing. But you can't help but look at the new kit, and part of me did toy with the idea of buying at least one new lens, because you know what it's like. You go to these shows and there are always offers, and they are good. I have to say, I could have got what I wanted for probably £200 or £300 less than I can anywhere else, including some of the deals you can get online, some of the import deals you can get online even. So I was really tempted, and what I wanted to do was change the 200 to 500 zoom. This is the priority for me, was to change the 200 to 500 zoom, which I use all the time, because I just find it so versatile, and it's light, and it's just easy, for the 180 to 600. Which people will know I'm a Nikon shooter, so the Z mount to go on the Z9, and I wanted to change it for the 180 to 600, which I could have bought for £1,500, which is a really, really good price. And there were 2 or 3 retailers offering it for that sort of money at the show. And the 2 to 500 I bought, I think, was about £1,200 or £1,300 when I bought it. So I thought, I might get 700, 800, 900 for that. And so actually the difference isn't too bad. Anyway, they weren't offering me anything like that. I might have got £500, and they were saying, "Oh, we can't sell these for £600 secondhand online," but all that, which I do get, but actually I don't think is quite right. But it struck me anyway. So I had a decision to make, and I went away and thought about it. Went and got myself a coffee and thought really long and hard before because I think the temptation with when you go to these places is you do something on the spur of the moment because you want it. And we as photographers, we always want it, don't we? We always want that new piece of kit. I'm terrible for it. And I thought to myself, this is going to cost me £1,000 to have a Z mount lens, which has an extra 100mm of reach. Okay, great. But what else does it do? Not much. Okay, it's the Z mount, but I tell you, the converter for the F mount to the Z mount on a Nikon, I can't tell the difference. It's really, really good. And so I thought, actually, what am I doing? I'm just adding an extra 100mm. That's it, for £1,000.
And you lose a little bit, Rob, right? The depth of field. What's the f-stop on that?
Well, it's variable. It goes from 5.6 to 6.3. But
Okay.
I mean, in all honesty, I'm going to be shooting at 600 most of the time, because you do, don't you?
You're at 6.3. So
Yeah. So you're at 6.3. I guess the autofocus might be a little quicker, probably, with the new tech and obviously the dedicated mount. But I had to sit down and work it out in my mind. That, do I want to spend an extra £1,000, and what do I get for that extra £1,000? While all the time inside me, I'm going, oh, you want this new piece of kit, you want it, you want it. Of course I want it. And if money was no object, I'd have been buying it. But I think that we as photographers, we do get carried away quite a lot of the time, particularly if you're in an environment like that where it's in front of you and it's only a credit card away, because it's so easy just to reach inside your wallet, pull your credit card out, hand it over, and I don't have to worry about that for 4 or 5 weeks. I'll worry about paying for it later on down the line. But for once in my life, I guess sort of reason took over, and sense, I was sensible about it and thought, actually, this is a decision I don't want to make today. I want to have it. I want to make it another time, because it's £1,000 is a lot of money, right? And it is for a lot of people. And actually, when you think about what you could do with £1,000 and the actual kits you could buy for £1,000 secondhand, you get a lot for your money. So that's really what sparked the conversation, because I've also wanted to talk about wildlife photography on a budget, or getting the most out of your kit. So getting the most bang for your buck without keep on wanting to upgrade all the time, because obviously I guess this is something the camera manufacturers want us to do. That's their business model, is to, we always have to have the next upgrade, but it costs us so much when we think about it. And what are we actually getting in return? How much benefit are we getting for the extra money that it's costing us? And I think that's always a good question to keep asking yourself when you're looking at new kit. And let's have a chat about, if your budget is limited, how do you go about getting into wildlife photography in the first place? Because let's face it, it's not like landscape photography, which is relatively low entry sort of price, if you like, because of the glass that it's involved in that style of photography. Wildlife photography is different, because you need
speed and you need low light performance, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
yeah.
So you need, not only do you need decent glass, which is the vast majority of the expense, let's face it, but you need it, if you're going to do it seriously, you need a high-end camera with a decent frame rate. If you've got a decent frame rate, you start having to have decent accessories like memory cards that write quickly enough, and we all know how expensive they are. So when you start adding all these things up, you are remortgaging the house, to get, if you're not careful. But I think you can, if we take a step back and we think about it, we can actually I think we can get into wildlife photography, number one, a lot cheaper than we actually think. And B, I think we can get a lot more out of our equipment than we think we can, if we just take a step back and just think about things sensibly, and how we actually use our kit, and what we want to, the type of images we want to take and how we're going to use them. So that's kind of where my brain was going with this anyway.
Yeah, and when we get requests for the podcast topics to cover, this is huge. Photography on a budget. I think this might be the most requested topic over the past couple of months from viewers and listeners, when we get messages and the messages that I get. So I'm glad we're going to talk about it, because, like you said, there's a couple things that drive this too: your skill level, how comfortable you are with your gear, what you're shooting, where you're shooting. All of these variables come into play in terms of what the best kit is for you, and do you really need to upgrade at a certain point, right? I mean, and like you said, right, you made a good point when you say landscape. I'm just thinking about this. You could take an old Rebel and a kit lens and put it on there and come up with a really good image, for the most part. But if you're trying to shoot, wildlife in Africa, low light, 5 a.m. and in the morning, you need high ISO performance. You need a great camera body. You need a fast shutter to capture the action, and then also you need a longer focal length to capture animals, right? Because you can't just get close to this stuff. When you're shooting landscapes, you can walk and position yourself wherever you want, and you're shooting with a wide focal length. When you're shooting animals, for the most part, you need a longer focal length, and that's going to cost you money.
Yeah, and it's not only that, is it? I mean, if you want nice out of focus backgrounds and isolating the subjects, you're not going to do that with a short lens.
Yeah,
because
right.
it can't give you the shallow depth of field that you need.
Yep.
And so it's a whole different ball game. I said, I think somebody said to me a while ago, that's why it might actually have been a publisher, a magazine publisher, an editor that was looking to commission a few articles, and he was saying to me that, and it was for a landscape photography magazine, and he said that landscape photography is a lot more popular, or it certainly was a few years ago. I think that is actually changing, simply because the price for entry into that genre is much less than wildlife. And when we sort of factor in all the things that we mentioned a few minutes ago, and I think that's when you do think about wildlife photography, and you go, right, okay, well, let's make a list of what I need, or what's my wish list. My wish list is, okay, you and I have got cameras that will shoot 20 frames a second in RAW. Well, that's going to cost you if you want that. That's I mean, the Z9 is what, £5,500. I don't know what it is in US. I don't think it's that much different actually in US, funnily enough.
I think it's quite similar, yeah, and the
Yeah.
R3, which is the current Canon flagship until the R1 comes out, it's in that price point too. Same with the Sony A1. I mean, you're talking between 5 and 7,
Yeah.
5,500, 59,
Yeah.
7,000, somewhere in that range.
So that sort of area. So let's sort of start at the top end. And I mean, if you want a 600 mil prime f4, you're looking at what, 15 grand?
Yeah, I would say between 13 and 15,000. I haven't looked at the prices in a couple of years, but yeah, it's right between, I'd say
If you
between 13 and 15. So you're over 20K with
Yeah.
the pro body and the uh 600 F4 or right
Yeah,
around.
exactly. And we
Yeah.
haven't got to start talking yet about memory cards, for example,
Mm.
that if you need a high grade fast write speed memory card, and one of those is going to cost you $400 a go.
Yeah, or you can get a 2 terabyte, and then you're up. I think I'd have to look at the pricing. It's been a while, but you're maybe at 1,000, and then you need a couple, right? Because you can't
Yeah.
just rely on one memory card. So there's a couple that add a couple thousand in. You need a tripod.
You need a tripod, and a decent tripod and gimbal head's going to set you back 3 or 4 grand.
Yeah, yeah. Gimbal
Um,
is at least 500, 600, a good one. If
yeah.
you're getting a Wimberley or something top end, then your tripod you can go cheaper on, but even still, carbon fiber, that's still in. Yeah, I mean, we're
You've got to
at what,
carry it around.
25,000, so we're at
Uh,
25.
uh, and then you need a rucksack to carry it all in.
That's right.
This stuff. It just
Filters.
goes, yeah, it just goes on and on and on.
And we
Not
only
to
have one
mention,
lens. We just have a 600 lens in that, right?
yeah,
So we don't have
yeah,
any 70 to 200s, any wider.
yeah. I mean, if you had a 70 to 200, that's £1,500, 2 grand.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, probably maybe even more than that, 2,500, something like that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, dollars. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
US. Yeah, probably is now, that sort of thing. And then you want a wide angle, and that you look at. So yeah, I was going to say, go
We're
and
in the
remortgage
30s.
the house, and you'll be fine. It's
Yeah.
you're not putting most of that stuff on a credit card. That is for sure.
The good news is once you invest in this stuff, if you invest in this stuff and you have the means to invest in this stuff, it's similar to being in the car market. So if you have a 600 F4 and you bought an earlier version and you want to upgrade maybe to the next version, or you skip a version and it's 4 or 5 years, you can sell your lens and still get a decent amount. Lenses hold their value. So maybe you get 60% of the value, maybe even 70% of the value, depending on when you sell it. And then you can put that towards the new lens. And then you're only going to ante up at that point, a couple more thousand versus another 14 or 15,000. So it's like trading in a car, So
Yeah.
the pain, there's the initial pain, and it gets less so when you're upgrading and trading in the lenses. Thank goodness
Yeah.
they hold their value.
But isn't it the camera bodies? That's the main thing. And I know
Yeah.
you're particularly bad at this, aren't you? You want I know what you're like. You want the
Yeah.
latest one, don't you? And you're out there, and this is the point I'm trying to make. And it's, I guess, if this is your passion and you have the resources to do it without too much pain, and this is what you live for, then fine. If you want the latest camera body and you want to upgrade every time the manufacturer releases something new, fill your boots. But most people listening to this, I guess myself included, are not going to be in that are not going to be in that area. I hold on to camera bodies for years because I just know that how much they depreciate, how quickly they depreciate, because all the tech's in the body, right? So okay, you've got firmware upgrades, but particularly when we've gone from the sort of DSLR phase through now into the mirrorless. So take, for example, the D850, right? I think we all agree that the Nikon D850 probably is the best DSLR that was ever made.
Yep.
And it's still a fantastic camera. And if you want to get into wildlife photography and you want to do it relatively cheaply, there are a few of those on the market at a good price. Okay, they've got the disadvantages that DSLR have. The main one for me really is that ruddy shutter. It sounds like a machine gun when it goes off. But if you want to get started
Yeah.
and get a decent camera body, I mean, there'll be a Canon equivalent, obviously. But for me, being a Nikon shooter, Nikon is what I know. The D850, you could probably pick one of those up for, I don't know, $1,500, something like that. Good
Yep.
secondhand one, and that's a lot of camera for that money. It's a lot.
Mhm.
I mean, that's almost as I'm going to say almost as good as Z9. It's not, but it's 70% or 80% of the Z9.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
in a
pretty
in a
yeah,
in
I
a,
mean, you can that's a pretty good camera, like you said, Rob, to enter into. And frankly, it depends on what you want to shoot too. I mean, I hate to say it for all the bird photographers out there, and we're bird photographers. I started out shooting birds. That's the most expensive thing to shoot. If
yeah.
you're not shooting birds, let's say you shoot macro, and you want to focus, you can get a Sigma, a used macro lens, an older DSLR. Frankly, you don't even need a mirrorless body to shoot macro. You don't even need a mirrorless body to shoot mammals. If you're shooting bison herds or whatever, 4 or 5 frames a second will do a lot of these older cameras. But if you're shooting birds, that's where I think you really want to take advantage of some of the upgrades that mirrorless has provided over the past couple of years. So what you shoot, I think, matters a lot. And unfortunately, if you want to shoot birds, that's when you have to open up your wallet.
Yeah, you do, but
I hate to say it.
you still, well, the thing is, you still can start. I mean, if you are just coming into this, there's no point unless money is no object for you, and there are people out there like that. There's no point in going and buying a Z9 or an R5 or a Sony equivalent.
Mm.
There's no point in doing that because you need to learn the craft first. And I think you can make your education as cheap or as expensive as you want it to be, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, 18 months ago, I was still shooting with a D800E.
Mhm.
And that's like, I don't know, 5 frames a second. But did it hamper me? Yes, it did in certain situations. I grant you it did. And would I have got better images? Yes, at certain times, absolutely. I agree. And the Z9 has opened up a whole new world for me. Well, the D850 when I got that, and now the Z9 having upgraded to that. Yes, it's opening up a whole new world of possibilities. But it gave me, that camera gave me a really good grounding, and I took some really, really good images with that. And that's a camera that you could go and buy for probably £300 or £400 now. Get an old one of those that will last you. I mean, it's built like a tank, that thing, so it'll last you, assuming the actual shutter mechanism survives. It's going to last you 2 or 3 years, even now, probably. So that's a really good example of, and there'll be a Canon equivalent. I mean,
Yep.
I guess some of the old Mark V, what
Yeah.
is it, the Mark Five?
Those were great cameras. I mean, like you, I started off with the Rebel, then a
The
7D,
5D. That's what I'm trying to
or
get
the
to. The
5D. Yeah,
5D, yeah, Mark Three, Mark
I
Four.
had the 5D Mark III and 4, but I never had the earlier versions, which are great cameras, by the way. But like you, I started off with the Rebel, then 7D Mark II, then I got 1DX, and now I'm in the mirrorless. But what's interesting too, for what it's worth, I see a lot of people who are just starting off, and at certain spots that we have, like here, where a lot of photographers will show up. There's a dam up here that all these bald eagles congregate in the wintertime. So you'll have hundreds of photographers. They call it the $1,000,000 fence. So I see a lot of new photographers there, and they're starting with the best gear, and it always blows my mind. And they're typically retirees, white collar retirees, wealthy, and the tripod is there, and they have a little rag, and they're polishing off the fingerprints on the R3 or whatever
Yeah.
and it's just, I kind of smile a little bit, and you could just see that, they're at the beginning of their journey. And so they're starting with the best gear. Now, does that give them the advantage? Probably not. I would say, I think somebody starting with a camera with less functionality doesn't put them behind on the learning curve. I think everybody kind of starts at the same learning curve, and I don't think gear will make that much of a difference, other than, the bald eagle dives and that individual probably has a few more shots and they could say, look, I have this, but the exposure might be off, the composition needs improve. It's the same old thing, so it's still not going to put them way ahead.
Yeah, that new equipment is not going to do those things for you, is it?
Mm-mm.
It's going to help. It's going to help you achieve better results once you've got the basics. But it's like buying me, the top of the range set of golf clubs.
Yeah,
it's pointless because I'm still going to slice it into the rough because I can't play golf.
Mulligan.
Yeah. But it's very much like that. I hate this phrase, all the gear and no idea, but you get the point.
Yeah.
That you can spend as much as you want, or I think you can temper your fiscal enthusiasm, if you like, and you can get a lot more for your money if you shop around and you box clever with it. Because I don't think I know you don't need, in most situations, a Z9. Okay, take another example, and the way that I think about wildlife photography. Now, I don't own a 600 prime f4 for a number of reasons, primarily because I don't want to spend that sort of money on a lens. It's not that I wouldn't want one, and if money was no object, again, yeah, lovely. I'd love to have one, and I would use it. But for the majority of my photography, it would hamper me because it's too big, it's too heavy, and the 2 to 500 zoom. I know people are going to, in the comments, they'll go, yeah, but think about the autofocus, about the the light, the extra light that it gathers, and I know all this stuff. And
they are lighter now, for what it's worth. Some of the newer models are lighter, but yeah,
they are, and technology is moving on, and they make your wallet a lot lighter too, I have to say. But yeah, for the majority, I did this calculation in my head, and I said, okay, so how much of my photography would it actually improve? For the most part, it's going to hamper me because I want that lighter zoom. It gives me the versatility of the focal range. I'm happy with. I know how it works. Okay, so for maybe 1% of the situations that I photograph, that prime would be better. Well, I'm going to have to pay 10, 12, 15,000 pounds for that 1%. That to me does not make any sense.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. And I just think for the majority of the discussion over the 180 to 600 is different because it's not the same amount of money. And eventually I will upgrade that lens. I mean, I'm going to do it. It's just a question of when. And I just decided that the photography show, what am I doing? This is going to be completely on impulse, not, a considered decision, which I always like to do when I'm spending money, particularly that amount of money, because it's not, it's not like a couple of £100. It's a significant amount for me. So I just weigh. This is how I approach it. I weigh it up. Now with the Z9, that was a completely different thing. And when I looked at the Z9, one, I knew I had to make the mirrorless leap because of there were so many advantages. And I had been waiting. I didn't want to go in with, the Z7 and the Z7 II because I'd heard the reviews. I didn't think Nikon were there with those cameras, and I wasn't going to invest this is another thing about maybe the shiny new object syndrome, is not leaping in straight away, because I know a lot of people that did buy the Z7, the Z7 II, and I think from a wildlife perspective were pretty disappointed. So that's quite a lot of money to not waste, but to invest in a bit of kit that actually was still in its development. So eventually I knew Nikon would have to catch up, and they came up with the Z9, which is it was a game changer of a camera for them, I think. And it set, at that point when it came out, it set the standard. But I waited for that. I didn't, because do you remember when that first came out, and because of the parts issue from COVID and all this sort of thing, there was a lack of product. So everybody was paying top dollar for it because they wanted it, and they wanted it now. And people have been on the waiting list, have bought it, and then we're selling it for double the price on eBay.
Yeah, I think the
The
Z9
craziness
people
of
were
that.
selling it for over $8,000
Yeah.
US on eBay and stuff like that. Yeah, it was crazy.
So how mad is that? So if you have the patience to wait, and I waited, I then got a deal on with one of these import companies, which was great. I think I paid about it was about £4,500. So for it, which is for for that camera here, was a really good price. But I justified it to myself at that point because I thought, no, they've been through various iterations of that technology. They've got to a stage where people have now tested it for me. So there were loads of reviews online because it'd been out for a year or 18 months by that point. So I knew all the positives and the negatives. So I could weigh it all up. And I thought, I need to make the switch. That is an ideal camera. I knew the Z8 was just about to be released at the time. So I knew that was coming. But I thought, well, the Z8 is just the Z9 without the battery grip. And I quite wanted the battery grip, and there wasn't a great deal of difference in the price. So eventually I went for the, I went for the Z9 and invested in it. But I justified it to myself because of all the things that I've just said. Plus, I knew that it was, it was the way forward for me, and I knew that it would take my own photography on to another level beyond where it was with the D850 and the DSLR, the whole DSLR thing. So, yeah, at that point, that's how I go about making my decisions when I'm looking to spend money. I don't do it on impulse. I sit down and work it all out before I commit the funds. And I think when we're thinking about shiny new object syndrome, the temptation is to reach for the credit card straight away and go and buy the latest thing. But
Yeah,
a lot of the time, I think we need to think about it a bit more carefully.
Yeah, I agree. And stepping back and considering what you plan on shooting in the field and what your style is. Like again, I shoot birds, so I do use my 600 f4 a decent amount out in the field for songbirds and things like that. So there's absolutely a need for it from my standpoint for my portfolio and what I want to capture. But again, if I'm shooting macro, if I'm shooting mammals, I'm probably not using the 600. I mean, I could, but I'm probably not using that. And I think also, in terms of not breaking the bank, it comes also when you made those initial investments. When is the right time to upgrade? So a good example is that once you're in the mirrorless world, you have firmware upgrades now, and when you look at some of the firmware upgrades, they're pretty exponential in terms of what you can upgrade to. And some of the new features on some of the newer cameras through firmware you could put into the older mirrorless cameras. So do you need to go from the R6 to the R6 Mark II if you're a Canon shooter, for instance, or like me, I have an R3 and the R1 is going to come out maybe in a year. Do I really need to upgrade from the R3 to the R1 if I have an R5 also, right, which is, higher resolution and the like. So I think judging when to upgrade, maybe skip a couple generations, get a number of years out of your camera, and then you can make that decision if you want to upgrade, and that saves you money versus always upgrading to the new model, especially if you're past the mirrorless hump and you're in the mirrorless world. I think it means it's not that big of a deal unless you're like going from, again, Canon. If you're like an R10, you have like a prosumer camera or a consumer camera, and then you want to upgrade to something really significant. Yeah, you're going to see results, but you're going to pay a lot of money for that. So you have to keep all of that, I think, in mind.
Yeah, but I think that's an understandable jump, isn't it? When you're looking at going from, that sort of entry level or that sort of, semi-professional hybrid crossover bit, and when you get into, the R5s of this world and the Z9s of this world, the difference in the build quality, forgetting everything else, it is immense. You really do see where the money's going, and those cameras are give you significant advantages once you know what you're doing. It's going back to the golf analogy. It's like once you've learned to play golf, fine, then, go and buy a really good set of golf clubs. That's going to help you. But if you've never picked up a golf club before, the most expensive set of golf clubs in the world isn't going to help you at that time, because you haven't been through, the learning process. So I think that's a really good point. And
Yeah.
and if you're getting into it, as I said, I think you can get into this for with decent kit, actually, for not a lot of money. I don't think there's been a better time, actually.
Hmm.
I really
Especially with
don't.
the zoom lenses. There's a lot of great priced zoom lenses. I mean, if you're going to get into wildlife, really, and you want to do it on a budget, get a used either DSLR or used mirrorless camera, and then maybe a nice zoom where you were talking, was it 180 to 600 or 200 to 600, 100 to
200 to 500, yeah, that sort
yeah,
of
you can
area,
get
yeah.
that range, and then maybe like a 50 mil or maybe like a 24 to 105, something wider, and then do like a 200 to 500, 200, something like that. It gives you a huge focal range where, you can go from, something that's close to being wide angle, 24 millimeter, and you can go all the way to 5 or 600. And, there you go. I mean, you can experiment and shoot tons of stuff with that and get away for, I don't know, a couple $1,000. It's still a lot, but, you're not going to be
Well,
spending
photography is expensive.
$50,000 like we just went through. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you want to do wildlife photography and you want these lenses, unfortunately, you're not going to be looking at a couple of $100, are you?
No.
You're looking at thousands. But I think you can shop really smart, and there's some great deals out there. I mean, what would your advice be? Would you be looking to, if you said I've got a budget of $2,000 or £2,000, whatever it is, where would you be looking to prioritize your money, or where would you advise people to prioritize their money? Would it be in the camera body, or would it be in the glass?
Definitely the glass, because the glass holds its value. You can sell the glass for a decent price and upgrade later. So I would say the glass. I'd say for $2,000, get a used middle of the road camera if you could. So I'm Canon. Maybe a used R5. If you want to get a little older than that, maybe even like an old 1DX Mark II from a couple years back. You don't have to spend a ton. You can get a 100 to 500 zoom. There's 100 to 400 zoom, a 24 to 105, and you can get all of these things used. I think you don't have to spend a ton of money on a tripod. You can get a carbon fiber. There's some knockoff brands, if you will, where you can spend a couple $100 and it's not going to break the bank on that. Don't buy expensive binoculars. You're going to be mostly, especially if you're out looking for birds. I always have binoculars, but I have this pair of Spirit. I think it's Spirit. I spent $150, $180 like 5-6 years ago. I beat the hell out of these things, and I would never buy a Swarovski set in the field because I just,
Do you know what I do all the time? I'm crawling along the beach, and of course I've got them hanging off the front of me. They end up absolutely caked in sand. It's got sand all in the mechanism. And you think, I forgot I had those on.
Almost with the binos, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's different ways you can skimp a bit and save some money. But I mean, that's what I would do.
And I guess it very much depends on what you're aiming on photographing as well. I mean, you with your songbirds, for example. I agree with you. If you're looking to do small songbirds, which you can't get that close to a lot of the time, you're going to want your 600 prime. Well, it's going to be a hell of an advantage for you, because not only that, you can use that with a converter. So that 600 becomes 840 or more, depending on the converter you've got. And that gives you a hell of a lot of reach and a hell of a lot of advantage. And of course, it gives you that nice shallow depth of field and that nice out of focus background on all those things that we like to tend to look for.
I've used converters on zooms. Some of them I was like F11 and manual focus. I'm like, all right, this is for the birds, pun intended, and took my converter off.
I mean, you can. I have done it with the 2 to 500. With a 1.4, do I like the results? Not really. They're okay. You can use them. I mean, if you put them on social media, nobody's going to know.
Yeah.
I could still use them for magazines.
Right? I mean, it's like Topaz Sharp and save me.
Yeah. And of course, using a lot of the thing is, what you got to remember is that you're losing a lot of light as well when you, particularly with the zoom. when you've got that. So the autofocus is, if it works at all, is pretty rotten. Yeah, it's not. I avoid it. I don't do it anymore because I just find the results, too unpleasant, really. But it's not impossible, and you can. But yeah, it works a hell of a lot better with a prime lens. I wouldn't hesitate with a prime lens, but with a zoom,
yeah. It works
yeah.
better with the zoom if you're going for artistic blurs and motion blur. I think you're.
Yeah. Well, it all comes down again, doesn't it, to where's your focus, if you excuse the pun.
Yeah.
Where's your focus in terms of the photography that you want to create? And for me, that means that a 600 millimeter prime, although it's a nice thing to have, is not essential, because I'm looking at producing artistic images, and I've stepped away a long time ago from that literal representation that is those lenses really lend themselves towards producing the best results for. So for my style of photography, it's not really necessary. So if it's not necessary, why would I invest so much? I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you're buying I'll get back to it again. If you're buying a lens for somewhere between £10,000 and £15,000, think what you could buy with that money. For me, it'd be much better to have the Z9 and to have 2 or 3 new lenses, and then have a load of change. I'll go with the 180 to 600. I'll have the, I mean, even the 800 PF, the Nikon 8, that's
And it's
only
lightweight, and you can,
yeah,
and plus
it's
with
what,
the
£6,000, something like that.
yeah, and with the teleconverters, you really don't even need them for the zooms. I mean, if you have a zoom that goes to 600, I mean, do you really need to be at 840 or what? You're probably not needing that focal length anyhow. So you probably don't even need the teleconverters. You can just
I mean,
not even consider.
let's think about how good the sensors are these days as well.
Mm.
You go back 15 years and look at the sensors 15 years ago and compare them what you've got now, and you can crop 50% of that image, and I can still print that, A2 probably, without, and nobody would know. So if
I'm going to let you
you're
borrow my R3, Rob, with my 24 megapixel jarring resolution. You
24 mega, it wouldn't get out of bed for 24 megapixels.
I know. I don't know what Canon is thinking with these
But
resolutions.
isn't that something that people don't talk enough about? Actually, that's a really good point. I mean, how much is the R5, for example? It's similar price to the Z9, right?
I'd have to look. I bought mine in 2020, so mine's 4 years old, and I bought it at, obviously I paid whatever the MSRP was at the time when it first came out. Although it went up during the pandemic because of the supply chain stuff. I'm not sure what it even goes for. Let me see.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody will know, but let's assume that it's a similar price to the Z9, or give or take. And then if you think that I've got double the pixel count virtually that you have, and obviously it's not the number of pixels is not everything, it's the quality of them as well.
3,000, by the way, 3,000 US, the R5.
3,000. Okay, so it is a lot less.
45 megapixel, that one. But the R3,
Yeah.
which is the flagship, the 24 I was talking about, that's got to be more. That's probably like 5K now. Maybe it's a little more than that.
So we're talking about the same ballpark, aren't we? And I've got virtually double the pixel count. Well, people go on about crop
5,500 for the R3 right now. Yeah.
So people go on about crop sensors and full frame sensors all the time, and the extra reach that the crop sensor gives you. Well, it doesn't give you any extra reach. It just the image is just more concentrated on a smaller thing. So it gives you the illusion that you've got more reach with your lens. You actually haven't. It's the same as cropping my full frame image down to the size of the crop sensor. I mean, it just, when you're looking through the glass, it just looks like the subject is closer to you, but it's actually not. So it's a bit of an illusion. But when you look at it in those terms, to spend more money on a camera body with more pixels then makes more sense than spending all that money on glass. In terms of a 600 versus a 500, you can crop more, but it just depends on what you want. I mean, I said, I get it entirely why you would want a 600 mil prime, and do I want one? Of course I do, but as I said, I just can't justify the price of it for the advantage that it gives me for all the reasons that I'm discussing now. So therefore, unless I win the lottery or, until my pension matures, I ain't going to buy one because, I'd rather spend the money on trips and go places, and have experiences rather than tying all that money up, in glass that I don't really want to carry around with me anyway, because my back's shot to pieces. And I don't want to be carrying it around. I'd much rather carry the 2 to 5. I find it much more. And when you were talking about tripods, I hate using them. And but this is the whole thing. This is horses for courses, isn't it? Some people, if you want a 600mm lens, they want it on a tripod with a gimbal head. I get that entirely. That's not for me. That's not my style of photography. So it is, think about what you want to photograph, how you want to photograph it, and is all this stuff that is on the list? Because I think people also have this issue with, it almost becomes like a uniform. You've got to have the 600mm prime covered in camo, camo coating. You've got to have a tripod with a gimbal head. You've got to have all this stuff to fit in and be a wild big
wrapped in the camo.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're not a wildlife photographer. Well, that to me is nonsense. It's all about what you want to photograph, how you want to photograph it, and the results that you get at the end of the day. So, yeah.
I think today, to your point too, with tripods, if you don't have to buy one, don't buy one. You could save the money. The only time I think it's really worthwhile now, if you have a 600 and you have a flash, off-camera flash, or you have a flash bracket, you want to raise it above your camera, you would do that with a tripod. Or if you do a lot of blind photography, if you're sitting in a blind and you're set up, if something
you don't want to be holding that
pick it up, and those are the two situations I can think of. Other than that, I'm like you. I'm all about hand holding, having something light, especially if I'm kayaking or I'm walking around and you want to compose. It just gives you so much more freedom. Tripods are there because we still have to use them to a certain extent, but I can't wait until we don't have to use them anymore.
Well, we're pretty much there, I think.
Pretty close.
I mean, you think, I think we're pretty much there. But do you not think that and I think a lot of this comes down to the camera manufacturers themselves, because often they've got a vested interest. They want to sell more gear. I mean, that's their business model. But if you are forever dishing up images of wildlife photographers with 600mm primes covered in camo with all this gear, you are subconsciously telling people that is what a wildlife photographer is. That's what I must have to call myself a wildlife photographer. Yeah. And I think you just need to take a step back and think about that.
Yeah, it's like anything else. We're a consumer-based society. I hate to say it, but when you look at how most of us live in these, we're in capitalist societies, and people want things. They want the newest car, or the newest fashion, or whatever it is. It's the same thing with camera equipment. It's the same temptations. It's the same marketing.
Of course it is.
Else, but
of course it is. Sorry, I've got Sky in the room with me, and she's
I could see her.
She's padding around. Yeah, she's padding around. She probably wants to go out. I might have to let her out in a minute. But anyway, come and settle down. That's it. Good girl. What were we saying? Just getting distracted by Sky. But I mean, obviously, the camera manufacturers have a vested interest in selling us the latest stuff. All I'm saying is that I think that you don't need necessarily the latest thing, and I think that you can, certainly if you're starting off, you can get into it for a lot less money, and just see how it goes. And I, unlike you, I wouldn't be going for every iteration of camera as it comes out, because there'll be a Z9 Mark II in the not too distant future. I'm absolutely sure. Am I going to go out and buy that?
Yeah. Wait till the Mark III maybe, or the Mark, and
exactly, and get the most out of your kit. Really get the most out of it. I mean, that, going back to my D800E, you want to see the state of it by the time I'd finished with it, but it didn't owe me any money. I bought it secondhand in the first place, so it didn't cost me the full retail value. And I had that camera for 7 or 8 years, and I beat the hell out of it. It took so many pictures, so it owes me nothing. And I think that's that's how I go about things. And I will do the same with the Z9
Yeah.
until till it gets to the point where people are light years ahead of me and they're producing so much decent work, but because they got all this, new kit. I'm not gonna change it.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
I'm
spending within your means too, and not stretching yourself or your budget for your camera equipment is important because you want to feel free in the field. When you're in the field, you don't want to be like, well, I don't know, I don't want to get on the ground or crawl through the mud because I don't want to get this new 600 or this new camera dirty. I spent all this money on it. You want to be in a position where you have gear that's trusted. It's a tool. It's not, a shiny object that you need to protect, and you need to put the tool through, you need to put it to work, and you want to be out there and not think of, oh, I need to hold the camera this way. I don't want to get it too close to the water. I might get water. You just got to go out there and beat the hell out of it and take pictures and not
do,
worry.
do you
And,
know, I
don't,
think
so
that's
don't
a really
stretch
good point.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Just
think
don't
that's a
stretch.
really good point. The thing is, this equipment is out there to be used, and
Yeah.
it is a tool.
Yeah.
And I can one of the first times I used the Z9, I took it to Shetland. And you know what it's like because you
Oh,
went out
yeah.
on the boat with Rebecca as well. So I'm
Especially when it
hanging
starts
off.
rocking that boat.
Yeah. So I'm hanging off the side of this boat, and I've got gannets, coming in over my shoulders, literally diving within a foot of the camera, and they are soaking the Z9 and what do I have on? I must have 16 to 35 or something like that on it, the wide angle. They were soaking both of them in salt water, and I've just paid, a ridiculous amount of money for this camera. And I'm thinking, well, this is what it's here for. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not, no, I'm not going to dunk it in the
It's weather
sea,
sealed, right? Yeah.
but and I'm gonna, wipe it off afterwards. But it's a tool.
Yeah.
That's what it's there to do. It's like having a car, isn't it? If you buy a brand new car, the first scratch is always the most painful.
Yeah, it's like,
But after a
what's that
while, you
song?
don't
First
care
cut is
anymore
the
because
deepest. Yeah,
yeah,
I know
yeah,
you're right.
exactly. And it's exactly the same thing with kit because I do it with lenses. You get a nice new lens, it's all nice and shiny, and you think, but you're going to be putting it in the mud.
Yeah.
Well, if you're like me, you are, because
Yeah.
that's what it's there to do. I lie in the mud or in the sand. We'll be talking about sand earlier in the binoculars. I mean, the amount of time, I'm having to get a brush and paintbrush and get all the sand out of the lens and the little nooks and crannies of the camera body. But that's what it's there for.
That's right. Yeah.
But
When I first started shooting years and years ago, I would get back home and I'd take the little lens cleaner, I'd clean off all the glass and wipe everything down. I haven't cleaned my stuff in, I don't know, years probably. And
yeah,
it's probably for the better for it. You don't want to baby your, one thing I'm just thinking of, it came to the top of my head when we were talking about traveling and locations. I think where you live will have an impact on what you spend too. I was talking to this one safari guide when I was in Kenya a couple of years ago, and he drove for the safari company, and he was what's the Maasai. I think he was part of the Maasai tribe. But in any event, he had a 50 millimeter lens on, I forgot what the camera body was. It might have been a Rebel. And that's all he shot with. But he's in Amboseli. He's in these wide, savanna areas, and he's got Kilimanjaro, the elephants. I mean, these are huge subjects. You could literally get away with just shooting a 50 millimeter lens and have amazing shots. Now, if you live in Vermont or New Hampshire and all you have are songbirds and little frogs or macro things, and you need a longer focal length, and it's going to cost you more money. So depending where you're located and what access you have to wildlife and how abundant it is, that's going to depend, and it's going to result in you needing either a 50 millimeter lens or 24, whatever you can get your hands on, or something a lot longer, like a zoom lens, a 180 to 600, because you can't get close. The wildlife's smaller, it's less abundant, and it's going to cost you more money. So location actually is a factor there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it comes back to what is it you're aiming to shoot, with this, with this kit, and do you need the regulatory, uniform that all these camera manufacturers and the wildlife photography magazines and whatever are showing you everybody shoots with? Because if you don't conform, then you can't be a wildlife photographer. And and I've always, I've never thought that way. I've never thought that way. I've just thought, no, I just need kit. Think of it this way: you just need the kit to take the images that you want to take. So decide what you want to take first. How accessible is that? How close can you get to these things? And what sort of kit do you need to achieve that? Forget about conforming to what you might perceive as being the archetypal wildlife photographer. What is it you want the kit to do? And when you've got that down, and perhaps you've bought some cheaper lenses, and there's nothing wrong with that. Buying some, I mean, you can buy cheap zoom lenses for a few £100, certainly secondhand, that are perfectly fine. And let's face it, when you're putting images on social media, who the hell's going to know anyway? You
And
can't
they're not gonna
necessarily
say, "Oh,
tell.
your lens is nicked up and it needs a new paint job."
Yeah.
Nobody's
Oh, hang on a minute. No, that's not, that lens wasn't expensive enough to take that image. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to take that down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of
No, that's right.
course they don't.
Yeah.
And I think that way, if you find out how those things work for you, and then you go, no, actually, that lens isn't quite right because X, Y, Z. I need. It would help me if I had that attribute which I haven't got on that lens, and actually there's something else there and I could buy that secondhand. So there's always, find out what you want to photograph, how you want to photograph it, and what you actually need to achieve the results you're looking for before you start opening your wallet and just going, well, I need the latest camera, I need the 600mm lens, and and then I'm going to end up paying for it for the rest of my life on my credit card, because I don't think that's the way to start. It's certainly not a sensible thing. For me, I could have done that, but I just decided that actually, for most of my, as I said before, for most of my images, going back to the 600mm lens, because it is the most expensive thing you're ever going to buy. I don't need it. I want it, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
So there's a difference.
People ask me, what can I spend? What's the best upgrade to improve my wildlife photography? It's not even, I would argue, it's not even a lens. You can go out and buy a book on composition, photography composition. I mean, Art Wolf, for instance, I'll plug him. I've been looking at his stuff for many, many years now. He's been shooting forever. But if you get a good book on artistic composition, complementary colors, and you spend $50, $60 on it, that's going to upgrade your photography way more than any piece of kit you could order online. So composition is where it's at. And figuring out how to compose a really strong nature image, that's what's going to put you over the top and make you a better photographer, not a 600mm or a new zoom or a new camera body. That's the best upgrade you can have. So that's my advice to anybody out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And the thing is, none of us know the sort of photographers we want to be when we start anyway. I mean, I did a talk to a camera club last week, and me being me, the talk's all about my journey into the sort of more artistic approach that I now take. But the point I was making is that you have to learn the craft first. There's a great quote that Georgina loves as well. She I think she gave me this quote actually, which was Pablo Picasso, who said, "Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist."
Yeah, that's a great quote.
It is a great quote, and because it's so accurate. And so, but I think basically what he was saying there is you got to learn the craft first.
Yeah.
So you got to learn, learn the rules of the game, and then you can make them up for yourself. And that is where the artistry comes in, because you start breaking with convention. So again, I just think it's going to take you a while if you are new to this game, or relatively new to this game. It's going to take you a while to understand the photographer you want to be. So why go out and blow a load of money on some really expensive kit before you've taken that path?
And it comes with expectations too. When you're out in the field with the best kit, people are going to have expectations of you. I've seen it where, folks they're out there, or you have somebody recently retired, as I was saying, with the best kit, and they're a brand new photographer. People will come up to them, ask them questions, or the expectations are much higher too. So keep that in mind when you're out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if somebody gave you a 10-year-old camera and, cheapish zoom lens, the chances are that the images that you will come up with over a period of time are going to be far superior to somebody who doesn't really have a lot of understanding of wildlife photography, hasn't got a lot of experience of wildlife photography,
Yeah.
with an R5 and with a 600mm prime, because they just don't know how to use it. It's like putting a learner driver into a Formula One car.
Mhm.
If you want, another analogy, because they're just not experienced enough to get the best out of the equipment they've been given. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense at all. It's just fact. So
Yeah. And if you buy all this expensive gear and you're just at the beginning of your photography journey, by the time you really get to know what you're doing, you have to upgrade. I'm sure there'll be 2 or
you're going
3
to
years
upgrade
later,
anyway.
once you figure out, what's going on anyhow, you all have to upgrade, so it's not worth it
Well,
up from the get-go.
of course, but at that point, you're upgrading for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's like me with the Z9. It's like I waited such a long time. Well, you know how long I waited until I got the D850.
Mhm.
And I was umming and ahhing about that for a while, but I knew that at that time they were coming down significantly in price because, of course, mirrorless was coming on the scene. So I got it so cheap, and I enjoyed that. I've still got it, and I keep thinking, oh, I should sell that really. But now I'm thinking I'm probably not going to get enough money for it, so I might as well hold on to it as a spare, because
Yeah.
it gets to the point where sometimes these things aren't worth selling. But that's another point, actually, isn't it? It's selling on your secondhand equipment,
Mm.
and not hanging on to it like I tend to, because I've still
And
got my 800E as well. But
And a big recommendation to everyone out there, if you're going to sell your equipment, sell it on your own. I've been doing this for years because I'll sell and upgrade. And I'm a little bit of a gearhead. I'm not a total gearhead, but a little bit when it comes to photography equipment. I would recommend, if you're going to buy a new camera, a new lens, or you go to a camera store, they'll say, okay, we're bringing your old gear. We'll give you a price. That price is never good. It's typically a ripoff. Normally, what I'll sell my equipment either through local websites or through friends who are also photographers and they're looking for gear. You'll make a lot more money if you sell it on your own, take those proceeds, and then go to the camera store and upgrade. If you're trying to trade everything in, it's like anything else. It's like your car in a way. You're
yeah,
not going to get the best deal. So
it's exactly, yeah, it's a really good advice, actually. I mean, most people don't want the hassle of it, and I get it
yeah, it's the
entirely.
conveniencing you
It's the
lose out.
convenience of it, but you do pay for that.
Yeah,
Absolutely, you pay for that. And I was being offered, I said £500 maybe for the 2 to 500, and I know that I get 8 or 9 probably secondhand if I sold
yeah.
it, via eBay or wherever. Which I have sold gear on before, but I'm terrible at holding on to things and not selling it, to be honest.
eBay, I think, it's been a little while since I've sold on there. I think they've raised their commission too,
Have they?
unfortunately. The cut, if you will, or the percentage that they take. I think especially for electronics, I think it's gone up recently.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the problem, of course, is actually mailing these things.
yeah. And coming up with
That's
the
the
right
issue.
price to get it in there and all
Yeah.
the fake, things. Oh, just send it to me and we can have this transaction outside of eBay. I'll send you a check.
Yeah. Yeah. You just need to send the money to this account.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had that before. Got that T-shirt. Never doing
Yeah.
that again. Oh dear.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother discussion, isn't it? Anyway, no, great discussion, Josh.
Yep.
I thought we'd sort of put that one out there, because I know that people have, as you said at the start, people have been raising it. So
Yeah, and
it's,
before we conclude, I mean, from your standpoint, if you had a name as a Nikon shooter, what would you recommend as a starting kit? Best
oh,
price starting kit, camera body and lenses.
I would probably it, I would probably go. Do you know what? I'm it, it. I suppose it depends on whether you want to go DSLR, or you want to say, I don't want the expense of that because it's not going to last much longer, and I want to go to mirrorless. I think you need to make that. I think at the moment you've got that decision to make, which complicates things. If you go down the DSLR route, which is, I think is perfectly viable. Just realize that that might be a bit more short term than a mirrorless solution for you. But I think you could get a D850 for probably not a lot more than £1,000 now, which is one hell of a lot of camera for the money. So for value for money, I know it's still expensive, but for value for money, I think the D850 is excellent. You could do what is it, a D500 or something like that would be even cheaper. This crop sensor D500 had really good autofocus on it, decent frame rate, decent sensor on it. You'd pick up one of those for less, much less now. And I would, if you picked up a 200 to 500 5.6, that's probably going to, I reckon you could pick one of those up if you shopped really smart, for £700 maybe. So the whole lot, I reckon, for under £2,000, which I know still sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But yeah, I think what you got to realize, as we said right at the start, you're not getting away with a couple of £100. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, you can't buy a car for less than, you know, a certain amount of money if you want a car. And it's the same with wildlife photography. But you are getting a hell of a lot of kit for you, a lot of bang for your buck with those types of setups. If it's mirrorless that you want to start going down the road of, I think with Nikon, I hate to say it, I think you're a bit limited. The Z7 II isn't bad, and I think you'd be able to get one at a reasonable price, particularly if you hung on for a bit more. If you hang on for another 6 or 9 months, I think, you know, you'd see a lot of difference in the price. But yeah, probably something like that, which will give you decent autofocus, decent amount of frames per second. Or the Z6 II, actually smaller megapixel would be cheaper. So yeah, probably the Z6 II give you about, what was it, 26 megapixels or something. Decent frame rate. Yeah. And something like, I'd be tempted, if you're going to go and stick with a mirrorless system, buy the Z mount lens. You can afford to spend a bit more money on the lens at that point.
It's
And I would, I think I would go for a new 180 to 600. I think that would serve you. The range in that would be pretty much cover you for most circumstances. That's what I would do. I think if I was going to shoot Nikon, I think you'd have to make the distinction though between whether you picked up a mirrorless or an older DSLR. I think the older DSLR give you better value for money, but it's not going to have the longevity, I think, if you started picking up the Z mount
value, right?
Yeah.
Resale. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a difficult time to answer that one with as much clarity as I would like. But I think those are your options. Personally, I'd go for the D850. I think, because then I would want something like the Z9, and I would wait a couple of years and buy one of those really cheap.
And I'm just looking at some of the prices on Canon used gear for 2K. I think you can get a really good kit. You can get like a 5D Mark III, which is like $500 or so, $600. If you get a 100 to 400 zoom, that's about $1,000, so $1,500. And then you get a 24 to 105, so a couple $100 there. So for less than $2,000, you can get some incredible pictures, good resolution. If you're in the mirrorless, I was looking like the R6. That was a great mirrorless camera. You're talking a little more. You're talking like 1,500, and then you'd get the 100 to 500. You know, you're probably going from the 2K range to get a camera body and two lenses similar in the DSLR. You're probably talking between 3 and 4. So you could do it a lot cheaper with the DSLR. But think about it. I mean, even if you spend $2,000 and you're able to get all these amazing images and you know what you're doing, versus spending, literally, we were talking before, $30,000 to $50,000. I mean, think about the difference. So if you're smart about it, you can really have some good gear and get some incredible images as long as you know what you're doing. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice. So, you know, if you are starting out as we've said, I think it's not going to cost you a couple of £100. Be prepared that you're going to have to spend some money, but you can spend a hell of a lot less
Yeah.
than you need to.
You could
Or
spend 2K, not 50.
yeah, exactly. And think of it in those terms. And
Yeah.
it's certainly, 2K is a lot less painful than 50. That's
Unless
for
money's
sure.
no object, I guess, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there aren't that many of us that are in
That's true.
that, have the luxury of that. So I think most people listening to this, $2,000 to pounds, whatever your currency is going to be a relatively significant amount of money, which
Yep.
takes some thinking about. So, but I think you can do it, and that's the whole point of this podcast. Was you don't need all this really, really high end gear. It's nice to have, but you can produce some fantastic work with very, very expending very, very little money, to get yourself started, and find out the path you want to go down, and then take things from there. And if you find that you want to and you have the money to do it, by all means, get the equivalent of the Z9 or whatever, or the 600mm prime, whatever suits your photography. But find out the sort of photography you are first before you start spending all this money, because it's not cheap. So think very carefully about those investments. That was kind of the message that I wanted to bring across in this podcast, because that's the process I went through in the photography show. Was going, yeah, I want the shiny new object. I want it. Of course I do. But sit down, think about it. How much extra is it going to give me? How much money am I going to have to spend to get there? What's the trade-off here? Is it worth it? Is it not? So think about it. And if you're careful, I think you can certainly get started for not a lot of money and produce some fantastic stuff. So yeah, there you go. Great discussion.
Yeah.
Great discussion.
Hopefully we're going to save you some money.
Yeah, checks in the post,
Yeah,
or you transfer online, whatever, PayPal, all those sorts of things we take for this advice and all this money we've saved you. That'd be great. Anyway, Josh, what's next for you? What do you got lined up?
Getting my camera out, as we were saying at the top of the show here, the weather's been so bad on this side of the pond too, and I'm hoping it's going to clear up in the next week or two with some warmer fronts. More birds will start showing up. The tundra swans are gone. With still some ducks left, but we're in that transition now between March and April, where you have a lot of the waterfowl leaving and new migrants are coming in. So I'm just hoping to get out there more and have better weather where I can shoot.
Yeah, it's spring flowers for me. I mean, that Georgine has really inspired me to get out and do some more flower photography.
Amazing with that book. She really did well, and she was on a time crunch, which makes it, when you think about when you're under these pressures, these printing pressures, and I guess the editors gave her a certain amount of time. That says something when you come up with that in a condensed period.
Yeah, to be relatively calm, and because you've got those time constraints, I think it speaks volumes. And the thing I like about it is that she always sort of comes up with something different. She always has a different idea, just doesn't shoot it in the same old way all the time. And I think that's inspiring. I think that we all need to try and think a little bit more, like I know I do, because you've got those default settings, if you like, where you take images and you go about it the same way, and you got to keep thinking of new things all the time, and I have to keep reminding myself of that. This is how I got to this place in the first instance, was by doing something different. I've got to keep going through those processes, and to try and create something a little different that looks different. I think there's sort of things like painting with light, for example, that was really inspired.
Yeah, that's cool.
I really like that. But of course, we're into, certainly in the next month or two, are going to be into prime flower season. So a lot of the orchids, and I tell you what's going to come up very, very shortly in the next week or so will be snake's head fritillaries, which are just the most beautiful thing. And I've got a great location, which not many people know about, for those. So I can go and be pretty much on my own there. And if you get it right, I did have one morning about 3 or 4 years ago, where we had a very late frost, and because they grow in floodplains, on a floodplain by a chalk stream in this instance, of course it's always really misty in the morning because it's wet. It's really, really wet. And if you get one of those, the sort of last cold snaps of the spring, so you get frost and you get all this mist, and of course they've got loads of dew all over them with the moisture, and of course it freezes, and then it slowly melts as the sun comes up. Oh man, that morning was just so magical. And of course at that point, this situation lasts like half an hour and then it's gone. And so you're running around trying to find a composition, like, that feeling, you're panicking, you're going, I've got to find, because I know this is not going to last. It was one of those times. So, maybe we'll get that again. I don't know. I mean, it's the luck of the draw. But it would be nice to get, a nice frosty morning, get out and do those again. But the window's so small, they're there for a couple of weeks, maybe. So you've got the planets have got to align, and they don't often. But I'd like to go and do those. And of course, orchids, there'll be some of the early ones will start to arrive, start to come up mid to late April, and from then on for the couple of months, it's going to be pretty busy with those. So I'm looking forward to all that. And of course, some of the woodland stuff. I want to try and get into the New Forest. And of course, there's the spring migrants coming in, and things are getting busy, starting to nest, so you get a few more opportunities with getting a bit closer to things. And I just need to get out. Just need some decent weather.
Getting out,
here's the getting out. My water's gone. I had my wine earlier, so Anyway, Josh, great to chat. Thank you for that.
It was great.
It was good discussion, and we've got some exciting things happening in the next few episodes. I've got some really good guests coming on, so look out for those. So we'll be doing quite a few more guest episodes, I think, over the coming
looking
months.
Forward to it.
All sorts of topics, from YouTube to to Shetland, to hide photography, to extreme weather, and all that sort of thing. So those are the sorts of topics we want to try and cover with our various guests. So look out for those. But as I said, thank you very much for listening, everybody, and we'll see you all again next time.
Thanks all.
You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.